If you want to sit down, calm.
Of course, that's you going live, Steve.
Is that the notification? Now, can the outside hear that? Do they? I know they don't hear it on non sequitur. They hear it on this. I'm sure they would because you're not streaming. So they'll. But
I'm sure they would. Yeah.
So if you guys just heard that, that's what we hear every fucking time we go live on non sequitur, without fail. I mean,
because I get YouTube notifications on my phone.
Yeah, so we get this notification like, what is it? I think you should take a stress pill and think things over.
Yeah.
And sadly, it's pretty apropos because we probably should, right?
Yeah, you probably should.
So anyways, this is not going to be a long hangout. I know I always say that, but I do have a engagement at 3:30. I will be on Neil, the 604 Atheist channel. We'll be having about an hour-long discussion on whatever he wants to ask me.
When you get there, let him know that I'll kick his ass in a children's card game.
I will.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we've been trying to arrange this for several weeks. Either it comes up something with me or something with him, and it just has not come to fruition. So this will be the actual time we actually get together. So if you don't know Neil, he's a long hair hippie freak like I am, and he does things like I do. So a pretty cool discussion. We're gonna see how that goes, but. So I want to get a little housekeeping out of the way. That was the first thing in order. Second, as you guys may know, Google Hangouts is going away. I found out. Not a big shocker, but that's not until 2020. So there is some time, a full year before they go away. Now, granted, there are many other ways to resolve having Hangouts, right? I like the quick Hangout because you can just use the Google encoder and boom, you're online. Like now, setting up an OBS or an exploit takes time, and not everybody wants to do that. Nobody knows how. So I had a few people ask me, Steve, we have no idea how to stream. We're technologically inept. Can you have a Hangout to show us how to do that? And I'm like, sure. If you guys don't know this, which is going to lead into the next portion of this, I actually was the one that got Nephilim Free back on air because Nephilim Free couldn't figure out how to stream. So a lot of atheists were willing to help him. No theists were. I found out like no theists were willing to help him, but a couple of atheists were, but he didn't trust them. He thought they were going to sabotage his channel, but for some strange reason, he trusted me enough to basically go into his settings with him and show him how it's done. Now we can't get rid of it. And he was in a hangout the other day with Standing for Truth, Cyrus the Skeptic. Who else was in there? Jackson
Jim Hall from Atheist Edge, RJ Downard from Tip, Jackson Wheat from Jackson Wheat, Mr. Brass from RPR, and then we also had there was one other person. There was Jonathan Sheffield, who also is going to be debating Dr. Richard Carrier here in a little bit on his blog.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 pretty much making me want to bash my head against the wall repeatedly until my eyes pop out. What was it like? Because I didn't listen to it any of it, but I couldn't imagine having Nephilim Free and Standing for Truth in the same hangout at the same time.
So it was a conversation where 6 people, host included, or host not included in those 6 people, 6 people were willing to agree with each other and be amicable on almost all terms, including all of the atheists agreeing on the benefits that religion has given society throughout the years in, building up what we have now as a government structure. I know that there are some atheists that take the vestigial organ approach, where they say that religion helped build it. Now we don't need it anymore. That's its own conversation. But you were able to get a bunch of atheists willing to give that ground to the theists. And then you had Nephilim Free and Standing for Truth, who could not give ground ever on practically any topic except for maybe 1 or 2. So it was very strange, or it just turned into them sitting on an island, just kind of dicking around. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say that the conversation with everybody else, solid 9 out of 10. Conversation with Nephilim Free, negative 3,682 out of 10.
He's a stumbling block. And let me tell you this. I'll give you guys some information that you may not be privy to before, but I have tried to arrange debates with Nephilim Free on the Non Sequitur show and on this channel and other places for the last, year. About 3 months ago, I finally freaking gave up when Ruhif, a friend of mine, he wanted to debate Nephi, and I did everything in my power to make it happen. I have never seen the hoops to jump through to cater to such a diva in my entire life. The things that Nephilim Free wanted was just ridiculous. every time we made an agreement on what the topic would be, he changed it every freaking time without fail. He didn't like the way it was worded. He didn't like this. I was like, dude, just tell me what the hell you want. And he wanted something so broad that it was outside Ruhif's area of expertise, which is in basically kind of a very specific portion of genetics. And I'm like, well, what's the point of that? That's not Ruhif's thing. He's not a geologist. He's not a physicist. He wants to talk about these particular topics because that's what he knows about. And it was ridiculous. So I was like, okay, forget it. I'm never going to try to ever arrange a discussion with Nephilim ever again. So I know how difficult he is to work with. And so I could imagine you being in a hangout with him where he's just stonewalling everything. I mean, the guy's a rock. I mean, we all know this. The guy knows jack shit about anything, but he literally thinks he's the smartest person on the planet. Did you ever watch the video where he had an imaginary conversation with a debate that he had fictitiously in his head about debating Dr. Hugh Ross? And it went something along this. The Big Bang never happened because black holes don't explode. Atheist, wrong.
Everything about what you just said made me want to take... It made me want to take copious amounts of cyanide.
And if you think I'm being hyperbolic, I am not. You can go watch this video. It's called something along the lines of "What if I debated Hugh Ross?" It is bizarre. Yeah, he has no understanding of any of these things. And then he reads a bunch of papers and he doesn't understand anything past the abstract. And even after the abstract, he doesn't understand. And people have noticed this. I mean, he has like 6 people that even bother with him anymore. So I don't know why you even bothered. I don't know why you were in there. I'm not faulting you, but Nephilim Free is literally the bottom of the barrel when it comes to these conversations any longer. Zero says for $2, if the guy's a rock, he's an atheist. I get it. Rock atheist. That's funny.
That is
and
funny.
It's like there was one point where, because one of the standard theist contrivances that's used in the debate is there's always the theistic side where they say, well, if atheism is so great, then what about Stalin, Pol Pot, and Mao Zedong? And then the atheist will usually reply with something like, well, Hitler was a Catholic, or any number of those. Instead, when we had that conversation, I decided I was going to give ground just to see what would happen. And this is where I realized that Nephilim Free probably should not be allowed in human conversation. Because I said, okay, I'm willing to grant that a nihilistic approach could come from atheism, or a purely so hard anti-theistic approach where you get what Stalin did, destroying churches in Russia. If I grant that, though, will you then accept that Christianity led to the Crusades, led to the Roman Inquisition, led to the Spanish Inquisition, led to just basically listing all of the large-scale atrocities that have come from Christianity? And they're basically going, look, if you want me to accept that from my camp, then I need you to accept that from your camp so we can go forward. To which his answer was, none of those were real Christians.
No true Christian fallacy.
And my response to that was, so let me get this straight. If I were to grab somebody with a master's in theology and another person with a PhD in history, and were to get them to build up what actually happened during those times and whether or not those people are the true Christians, as opposed to the young earth creationists whose movement started in the fucking 1940s, which one of those are actually the longer standing true Christians? Would they side with you or would they side with me? Because I can grab people who fit all of those academic credentials to figure out which one of us is right. And I say I'm over 100% certain they would not agree with Nephilim Free.
Oh, I guarantee it. And you got to remember, Nephilim Free is the guy that for ages thinks, and he still does, that thinks that DNA is comprised of amino acids.
Correct.
And I'm not even exaggerating. I literally went into his hangout or in the live chat to ask him that question because he said it so many times. And when he was having a discussion with Thick Shades had asked him the question that I posed and was like, do you still think that DNA is comprised of amino acids? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, okay, I'm done. But But anyways, no, I will never debate Nephilim free. I just got done saying what a pain in the ass he is to deal with to arrange a debate. Right? Why would I waste my time? It's just not going to happen.
I'll be honest. If I had known that Nephilim Free was going to be on the panel, I probably wouldn't have hopped in. I'm not angry that I hopped in because I'm glad I had the experience of dealing with them at least once. But like, I already had a strict no standing for truth policy. Like any time I saw him on RCA's channel or anywhere else, he was insufferable. So I said, no, I'm just not going to deal with that person if I see him on stream. Saw him on stream here with Nephi, and I was just like, okay, well, this will be the one time that I break that policy. Whatever, it'll be fine. It'll be an adventure. It was an adventure. It was definitely an adventure. If the rabbit hole were like 6 inches deep and that was the extent of their intellectual honesty, then yes, it was an adventure.
You can't get him to stay on one topic, and you can't get him to even, like you said, give any ground whatsoever. Now, when it comes to standing for truth, I know he wants to have a discussion. I don't fine, because I've never really talked to him, so I don't know what he's like. I just know of him. I've listened to him, but I've never personally talked to him, so I can't say he's not worth it.
Hey, he's a parrot for Nephi.
Well, here's the thing. You know, if he wants to talk about specific things like haploid groups, I'm not your guy, right? I mean, he could talk to Dr. Mays. You can talk to Ruhif, maybe. There's a couple other people might know about. I have no idea about haploid groups. But if he wants to talk about chromosome number 2 fusion with like Glenn and I'm okay with that. I'll talk to him about that. That's one topic I do know a little bit about, not a lot, but I mean, I don't have to have a conversation with him. But again, I'm only willing to have conversations with people on topics that I kind of have at least a basal understanding of, right? I want something very basic. But if it's something way out of my thing that I've never read about, like haploid groups, what good is it? I don't understand why people want to talk about specific things with people that are just not read up on those things. I'm not read up on it.
It's people who have an inferiority complex who have to constantly go, debate me, bro, debate me, bro, debate me, bro. And if you want an example of that, just take a look in your live chat.
Yeah, I don't play that game. There's certain people I will not debate or have discussion with. It's just the way it is. And people want to like argue and say, oh, look at Steve running away. Fine. I'm running away. I'm a big baby coward. That's fine. But it saves me time. And that's all I'm concerned about. My time is valuable to me, and I'm not going to waste it with people that are just not going to either get my arguments right or just like you said, either Gish Gallop or Nephi clones. Now Standing for Truth is out there in the live chat, and if he, like I said, I don't know. Now Standing for Truth, you want to come in and you want to talk about chromosome 2? We can do it right now if you want. But I have offered a formal debate, and what the formal debate I've offered is, what happened was I had this gentleman. Let's just call him Leprechaun, and he wrote a pretty decent 4-page summary on agnosticism and atheism. Wrong, but decent. It was very, very well written. It was grammatically correct. I mean, the guy put effort into it. There's no doubt this guy is not an idiot. Okay. And I read it and I was like, this is not bad. And granted, I think I see mistakes in it, but it's not bad. And so I told him, I said, I'm more than happy to have a discussion with this and even a formal debate on agnosticism if you like, because you are somebody that clearly is not just spewing, here I have a dictionary. Look, I've got a dictionary. Not interested in that. But I have been communicating with him, and I haven't got he says he doesn't want to have a debate. He just wants to have a discussion, but he didn't know some of the terms that I use, and I've been clarifying to him some of the issues I saw with his quote paper, and I don't know if that might change his mind. So we'll see. And by the way, can we stop the buzzing? People find it.
You guys can actually hear that? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we can.
Well, it's better than hearing HAL 9000 every time it does it, isn't it?
Well, you just mute it.
I mean, I'd imagine if you put the phone on like a pillow or something, that should isolate the sound, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I took it off my hardwood desk.
So if he doesn't want to, if he doesn't want to have the debate on that, it's fine. If somebody else does, I'm all open to it. Again, there are exclusions. Certain people I will not debate or discuss with, but if somebody, especially if they know a little bit about epistemology, would be so much better. I'm not really interested in having somebody go, oh, look, I've got a dictionary. Not my thing. But does Standing for Truth want to come in? Because he's been like busy every time. I was like, dude, you want to have a hangout? Yeah. Okay. I sent him the information and then he doesn't come in. Yeah. No, I don't. He says, simply replacing Darwin and genetic entropy, which I know you know quite a bit about. I don't actually. I mean, I know of genetic entropy. I know of Stanford's claims, and I've read Replacing Darwin, but I don't understand molecular clocks very well. I don't understand coalescent theory. Not my gig. If you want to debate coalescent theory, then again, talk to Dr. Mays. I wouldn't even know enough to begin to have a discussion on coalescent theory. It was a part of the book. When I read it, I was lost. What I criticized Dr. Jeanson for was a couple things. One, I think he had omitted a lot of things. I think he just made a fiat assertion of a lot of things that he didn't provide actual substantive evidence for. And I did ask him a little about chromosome number 2. He never got back to me on it, which was surprising. He just asserted Tompkins' research, but he didn't actually tell me what Tompkins' research was, because we've all asked for it. Many people have asked Tompkins for his research. None of us have gotten it. So hard to evaluate something if you can't really, you know, look at the evidence that he's looking at, because he'll write a blog on it. But I like to see the transcript reads from the DDX11L2 gene, which he claims goes across the fusion site. Right? If you're going to claim there's an active gene there, then it should have some transcriptions, I would imagine. But the last one I looked at was like 3.9 RPKM or something, if I remember correctly. So it wasn't very high. I mean, that's just like very low. The highest was a tissue, I think was in the testes, and that was it. So it's not really expressed gene if it's an active gene. But anyway, so does he want to come in?
I've pretty much got to the point with the evolution debate, and I said as much on a JMD Apologetics channel a little while back. And when it comes to the evolution debate, I pretty much stay out of it, mainly because if two lay people want to go at each other's throats when they don't understand the topic, then all they're going to do at the end is rip out each other's tracheas, and that's about it. Whereas if you actually have two people who have time in the field, or who have spent a massive amount of time studying and are no longer in the lay category, then that's actually an interesting conversation that can go somewhere. And if these two people who have researched everything came to, dichotomous views, then seeing what results of that is interesting. But seeing two people that assert they know what they're talking about when they really don't, it's inane.
Yeah, and look at people know I am 100% pure layperson, and I'm cool with that, because that's what I think it makes my channel enjoyable and me on Non Sequitur enjoyable. Kyle and I are not experts in any of these fields. That's why we bring in experts, but we're not idiots. We have a rudimentary understanding of a lot of things, and we're able to discuss them, and I'm fine with that. Lay people should discuss things. We're all lay people. We all have discussions.
No, but they shouldn't use those discussions as a method of saying that an ultimate truth is reach by the end of that discussion, because I've had a lot of comments on my channel, especially on the Dangers of Wu series, where somebody's like, well, why don't you debate me on Orgon energy and see what's real? And I'm like, so let me get this straight. You're telling me that through me and you having a discussion, we're going to somehow come to a conclusion that usurps the scientific consensus?
I don't get that either. They think that for some reason, if two lay people are going to hash this out, it's going to change all of science. Or even worse, it's going to change the ontology of the universe such that, it's going to be the case. I'm going to tell you guys this. I'm pretty certain this is the case. You're never going to prove God in a hangout. You're not going to disprove God in a hangout. You're not going to falsify a scientific theory in a hangout. If you do, that's plausible at least, but not very likely.
Well, you can parse out a syllogism in a hangout. That's something you can do literally, like sitting naked in a bathtub. You can parse out a syllogism, and you can figure out where there's inconsistencies. But that's not the same thing as uprooting a theory. Uprooting a theory doesn't happen through standard conversation. It takes years and years of experiments and consensus data, which is not what you get in philosophical conversation. And that's fine, because they're two... While I understand that philosophy is the groundwork that science is based on, I also understand that there comes a point with that tree where the two branches diverge.
Yeah, where are you going with that, though?
Basically saying that, so with philosophy, your peer review is going to let people recognize whether or not your logic is consistent, whether whether or not your argument is valid, and it could be that they find that your argument is sound. Whereas the rigors of peer review in science are a little bit different, where they're trying to see if something's replicatable. They're not just trying to replicate the logic behind it. They're trying to replicate physical, tangible things in that as well. And typically it's going to take a lot more time than just looking over a paper and trying to math out the logic and see if things work. It's going to take a little more time. It's not something that can be handled in a single conversation. I can deconstruct a syllogism in a single conversation, but I can't deconstruct an entire scientific paper in a single conversation.
Well, yeah, and you know, by the way, you know, I have all these syllogisms and things that I write, and of course, I mean, they're not going to be something for peer review. I mean, if these are actually not even that contentious, I would imagine, in actual philosophy, right? I'm just writing them in a way that the average layperson can understand them, right? This is not groundbreaking stuff. And so when people say, oh, Steve's argument is flawed, well, then you're saying epistemology is flawed, because this is generally the way it is. It's just I'm wording it in a very specific way. The logic is valid. The premises are true. It's sound. I don't see what the problem is, right? So, you know, that's all I'm doing is relating these types of arguments, because I read a lot of stuff, and these are the arguments I see out there in the papers, but I think they're not worded very simplistically. I think that they're convoluted in a lot of ways, because they're so precise that I'm like, okay, what's the best way to distill this information down without losing accuracy, without losing, you know, some granularity of the
well, that's
topic.
Like how Dr. Carey refers to that, because when we had our conversation on philosophy, he pointed out that what he tries to do when he's writing his blog is he tries to write things out the way that a layperson can find it useful. It takes a more pragmatic approach as opposed to the more ivory tower approach, which is more academic. He finds that the more ground level stuff is more useful because you can apply it day to day.
I think that's true. Yeah, and you know, I like the ground level stuff. I think that a lot of the stuff does have utility if you really look at it. I think that the philosophy we use and the rationale we use is something we can use in our daily lives. I was talking to somebody the other day, and one thing we both agreed upon is that most of the critical thinkers are out there that are saying that they're critical thinkers aren't critical thinkers. And it's really disconcerting. Matter of fact, I recognize a critical thinker. You, Cyrus, are a critical thinker. You know, David is a critical thinker. Lawrence, not so much, but you know, it's okay. No, I'm kidding. By the way, Lawrence,
Hello,
welcome,
Lawrence.
you long-haired, gorgeous man. You.
Hello. How is everyone doing
Only
today?
person that has more luscious hair than I do. Fuck you. Hey, Lawrence, I don't know if you want to like spew the good news or what you got planned, or you want to like tease it, or do you want to?
Well, yeah, we don't really have anything planned exactly, but you know, some ideas are rolling around for this, and although I think we should still work on the name, so Jim Majors, Christopher Hansen from Bible History Skeptics, and I are teaming up to become the new Unholy Trinity. And we are going to be doing a lot of really in-depth biblical scholarship. And we are going to... It's going to be in-depth, but this kind of ties into what you guys were talking about when I was just getting in here. But we're going to make it digestible. We're going to make it so that the layperson can still understand it and have a grasp of complex topics with a huge history. So that's our goal. We don't have anything super like specific planned, but we do have at least our goals lined out, which is good. And I don't even think we could have lined out all that stuff without Steve just saying, "Hey, what are your goals?"
It doesn't take much. Yeah, I don't know how much input I'm going to have. I guess I'm going to be some kind of weird creative consultant on this, but. We'll play it by ear, but yeah, no, I think it's a great endeavor. I haven't known Jim for very long. Matter of fact, a couple of weeks maybe. We've been talking about, you know, when getting him on the Non Sequitur show, which he did come on. But for some reason, we hit it off really well. We've been talking for several hours, and you know, every couple of days, and I really like the guy. I think he's going to be a very, very good asset to your channel.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Start or whatever program you do.
Yeah, we're probably gonna start a new channel for this.
Probably a wise decision. Yeah, he's got a lot on the ball. If you guys don't know, Jim Majors is the CEO of Atheist Republic, and he's not like a lot of the new atheists. Matter of fact, he's much more open to basically reevaluating what he thought he was, trained to believe or indoctrinated to believe, even about atheism. When people challenge him, he'll go look at the citations and he'll look at the readings and go, yeah, you know what, I was wrong about this. And he takes that same scholarshiply, yeah, I guess
Scholarly.
scholarly scholarly approach to his book writing, right? I mean, he wrote a book on contradictions, and he really wants it to be accurate. And what else can you want from somebody, right? You want somebody to put out accurate information. That's what I try to do, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think that is what you try to do. Yes.
I mean, I don't always succeed. Sometimes I get things wrong, but that's when I get called out for it. So that's fine.
I can say that it might not amount to much, but I have had a couple conversations with Jim in live hangouts, and I've actually really enjoyed his company during those. So definitely good to see him doing stuff for the community.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's going to be a wonderful addition to the to atheism kind of thing. Because again, you know me, I get really tired of the new atheist bullshit. They're ideologues, and I'm just not interested in that. I like things to be correct, not advantageous because I'm pushing a specific narrative.
I mean, I don't even know if I would put myself in that camp anymore, or if I would. I know I definitely started off that way. So I still maintain many of the dispositions. Like I enjoy a good destroying of a creationist. That's just classic, and it's great.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, I still do that. I don't mind that at all.
I mean, yeah, but that's kind of what the whole new atheist thing was like built off. It was like, here's a bunch of stupid theist arguments, and here's how they're stupid. And it was very in your face, firebrandy, and I definitely appreciate that attitude. I definitely really like it, but I don't even know if I would put myself in that camp exactly anymore. I'm not even sure.
I think that the best practice when it comes to stuff like that, because this is what I try to do on my channel, when you're dealing with an elevated argument, when you're dealing with like an actual good logical syllogism, you can deconstruct it and you can have the elevated conversation. But when you're dealing with like a young earth creationist who almost always are either ideologues, idiots, or both, I think we can all agree they always fit into those categories. When you're dealing with somebody like that, then your brutal firebrand takedown is fine. Or you can go the comedic approach of like slamming your head against the wall and going, okay, nope, I would just like 50% of my brain matter to go away because it's infected with this now. Like going the comedic or firebrand approach is fine when you're dealing with something that's nightmarishly stupid. But if you're dealing with something that is part of elevated conversation, my opinion, the best practice is just to realize when one conversation is happening and take the correct approach there, and realize when the other conversation is happening and maybe not give them the credence there.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I get that. I also think it does have to do with your goals. Like if you want to win a debate with somebody who's just really, really stupid, like doing the whole firebrand thing might help you win the debate. But if your goal is to like change minds, like I think that there is a way in. I think that there is a way to change the minds of ideologues like that. And I think that we can. My approach that I've been taking in the past few years has been I start from the Bible because I think the Bible can do a fine job of disproving the Bible. So I just leave it up to the book, and all I have to do is point out what is in their book, and explain how, from the standpoint of history, it got in there.
That's a great way to put it, actually. Comical Mommy, by the way. Hi, Comical Mommy. She said something that really stood out too. She said, well, at first, that sort of atheism is cathartic, especially if you're freshly converted. Then you reach a equilibrium and you calm down. That sort of firebrand stuff isn't necessary anymore. And I happen to see that. I can understand that. But the problem I run into is the firebrand stuff, as you guys noted, doesn't work too well in an actual legitimate type of debate system. Sure, it works against somebody like Hovind, right? Because he's an idiot. But as soon as you start going against somebody that really understands these topics, firebrand atheism is not going to cut it. And when people argue shit just for the sake of arguing it because they've been so indoctrinated to believe a certain way, then you're not really having a discussion at that point. You're just promoting the ideological viewpoints of what atheism is supposed to be set forth by American atheists and David Silverman. And I think David Silverman was an idiot. So
at that point, you're just fighting fire with fire instead of actually smothering the fire that you're trying to do something about. You're just causing all of California to burn.
Right. But I mean, don't you think though, by calling out these issues, that overall it makes atheism stronger? If you're saying, hey, look, these firebrands like David Silverman, especially, and Peter Boghossian, Dr. Peter Boghossian,
Peter Boghossian.
Boghossian. Yep. Sorry. I'm having a hell of a time today. Peter Boghossian. Those are the radicals. And I don't think it does any good to have that kind of narrative because it's not going to change anybody's position. And this narrative of, oh, well, I'm just not going to believe the theist. Okay, great. Move on. I'd rather have a discussion with a theist and, like you said, with the creationist, and show them why they're wrong. I'll not only accept the burning of proof, I will take that burden of proof and shove it up their ass sideways. As Res Rhetoric would say. I'm totally
because you're actually able to demonstrate that. And it also depends on what format you're doing as well. Like if you're doing a debate where both of you have equal time or you're having a discussion, then I think that approach is fine because that's an approach where you can either influence the minds of people who are on the fence or influence the minds of people who are indoctrinated and simply haven't heard the other side of the argument to really make a decision. But if you're doing like a quick 5-minute video, then your approach might be that, or one of the more firebrand tactics. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Are you trying to get a laugh out of your audience? Are you trying to actually like legitimately influence minds? And how much respect do you actually have for that individual? Like if I was dealing with somebody who's a young Earth creationist, but they're otherwise, mildly respectful, my approach to them would be very different than one if I were to get into an actual conversation with, say, an Anderson or a Powell.
Well, you escalate, you give what you get kind of thing, right? And somebody like a Powell, I'm not going to have a discussion with any longer. It's just not going to happen. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. He would tell me one thing, he'd go into the channel and just do a 180. And I am just not interested in that type of person. He's duplicitous. He's dishonest. He's a piece of shit. Not interested. Let him go on some other platforms. He doesn't need mine.
No, and I agree with that. That's why the only exposure he's ever had on my channel is when I'm deconstructing one of his things, or here recently, since he released his latest bullshit movie, got me and a bunch of other people, including R and Raw, to just deconstruct his movie.
Oh, I'm sure. I watch bits and pieces of things that Matt has put out. I'm a sadist, I guess. I haven't commented on him, but oh my God, he's not even wrong. He's not even wrong, not even wrong, not even wrong. He's just, what the fuck? It's bizarre.
It's like listening to an alien try to interpret what people think.
Yeah, I don't think he's even living on the same planet as the rest of people. Speaking of which, people that are not living on the same planet. Hi, Brian.
Hey, guys. A fun conversation. What I was thinking about all this is Mike Winger has been, talking to people like Apologia and Scholar Fiction. And it's good conversations, but I think, and Mike Winger's growing, good for him. Then he's more honest. But then you get people like Mr. Powell who are dishonest. And I don't know, maybe we like the dumpster fires a little too much, because Mike Winger, I almost find to be innocuous. He's just kind of your everyday apologist, going to say everything in the Bible's right because it's right. And I'm just like, okay, you can twist and turn it any way you want. I get it. I've seen this before.
But he really believes it, and I don't find Mike to be a dishonest person.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like, it's kind of the boring apologetics. They're kind of boring. It's like,
Matt's dishonest. There's a huge difference.
Yeah,
Though.
it's there's a difference between your boring apologetics and what like Matt and Hovind use, which is your weaponized apologetics. What's funny though is that there's this really contradictory mindset there where you'd think that if you're going to weaponize apologetics, as your Matts and Hovins and Andersons do, that you would at least go for some of the arguments that are more convincing, whereas they go for like the basal, very, very, very easy to refute arguments and weaponize those ones. And it's confusing to me because it's like if you're taking all this time to try to convert people to your, in their case, it's a cult. Not all Christianity is a cult, but the NIFB most certainly is. You'd think that you would go and try to construct your position a little better if you're going to go through all the trouble of weaponizing it.
Well, I don't know why apologetics happens to be weaponized any that's not the point of apologetics. Apologetics originally is supposed to be
apologetics is supposed to be a defense, not an offense. Yes, it doesn't change the fact that you have, and you've seen Hovind do it as well, that you do have people weaponize philosophy and weaponize apologetics in order to try to convert people to their point of view, as opposed to giving them food for thought.
I want to end with this because I have to run, but I agree. Apologetics is about defending the faith, and the problem is you can have Islamic apologetics and you have Christian apologetics, and they're both about defense. They're not about finding the truth. It's purely about defending the faith, and I find that to be dishonest, to only defend something and not to figure out if that something is even true. I don't know. I hate apologetics.
No, I understand the defense thing. I do get it from their perspective, but unfortunately, it does boil down to, why is it so confusing that there has to be these apologetics to begin with, and why is there so many different interpretations of apologetics? Von Til, Bonson, Plantinga, you got all these different types of apologists, and they don't even agree with each other. And most of their apologetics, to me, and I'm being very objective here, just doesn't make any sense.
Well, and honestly, I think that the subsect of people that apologetics actually have converted to the faith is so small that it could almost be ignored.
Yeah.
It's more about keeping people in.
Right. It's not meant to convert the non-believer. It's meant to give justification for the theist for why they believe what they believe. That's literally what I think it's for. And for people that don't know the arguments, some of them sound pretty legit. And even for those who do know the arguments, they can sound pretty legit. And I don't think a lot of the arguments are like exceptionally bad, right? I'm the first person to say the ontological argument or is not really, a horrible argument, right? Or I should say the argument from contingency, not the ontological argument.
Well, there's also like the Kalam. As long as you subscribe to A theory, the Kalam's pretty good for getting you to deism, at least.
It's logically valid. I mean, I hate when people say the Kalam's not logical. Well, what the hell you mean?
If you assume a particular theory of time, the Kalam functions within that theory of time. The problem with the Kalam does not lie within whether or not it functions. It lies with what its conclusion is. Its conclusion is the mental gymnastic. All the premises line up. Its conclusion is where it makes the jump.
Well, sure. And even when it comes to like the argument from contingency, I like to steel man. You guys know that. I really think that the best way you can refute a theist argument, or any kind of argument, is to take the most charitable approach possible. Because if you can destroy the best evidence they have, or the best argument they have, or whatever salvo they're throwing your way, then everything else is easy at that point, right? So I'm willing to even grant things like, okay, yes, these things are logically valid. Of course, the argument from contingency is logically valid. The Kalam is logically valid. And I'm even willing to grant sometimes that the premises are sound, like even in the argument from contingency. Sure. But then I just argue the argument as a whole is not convincing because it doesn't do what it purports to do. It doesn't set out to resolve anything with a principle of sufficient reason. It doesn't tell you anything by positing a deity. What is the explanation of a deity for this causal chain of contingency? It doesn't tell me anything. The deity
itself begs a lot of questions.
Yeah, it doesn't answer anything really. It's a non-answer.
You have to figure out if the conception of a deity is even correct. You have to figure out what motivations the deity may or may not have even had, or if the deity even existed past the point of creating the universe. If you're going for a first cause argument, you end up begging more questions than you set out to answer in the first place.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you posit the deity, then the deity has two choices. You either had to make a he had to make a decision to make this possible world, or he had to make it by necessity, in which case either one doesn't really tell me what, what was the case.
Yeah, it doesn't get you anywhere. This is a video that I've been wanting to make on my channel, because I did the granting the premise video, but I feel like I didn't go as far into the idea as I really wanted to. I kind of want to do an entire video about just conclusions, like basically just accepting on their merit that all apologetics are true, and just for the sake of all of those being true, for the sake of all of them parsing out to being correct, you land somewhere at deism-ish.
Well, I mean, that's the best case scenario, right?
Yes. And I want to do a video on that, where I take the idea of granting the premise to the opponent to the logical extreme of accepting literally all possible arguments and showing where that actually leads, because it doesn't lead you to a particular faith. That's the issue.
Hey, look who dropped in.
Hello. Chris is here.
Okay, we can end now. Thanks.
Why do we have to have two Chris's here? This is upsetting.
Because nobody calls you by your first name. You just dox yourself.
Everybody knows what my name is.
We got a Chris on our channel too, except nobody really likes him. So we have the Chris that just hopped in as Chris 1, and then our Chris is Chris 2, because Chris 2 sucks.
So, Lawrence, we'll have to chat later, but I just got about 12 or 13 books from the library. Talmud stuff.
Oh, okay. I was gonna guess Job, but all right.
Well, it's all for Job.
Oh, okay then.
Now, there was a question posited the other day, and I think it was by you, Chris. Was Job actually the first book written in the Bible? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I asked. I'm doing a poll. I'm doing a series of polls in different groups to see how many people actually believe that.
And I voted no. Now, are you going to tell me if I'm right or wrong, or are you going to wait for the poll to be done?
Oh, you're right.
Okay. I just wanted to hear that,
I was so tempted to just click yes, it is, but I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Couldn't do it. So what actually is
anyways?
I mean, aren't there isn't there some parts of the Bible that are considered to be written earlier than Job?
Yeah.
Plenty. Oh, like Isaiah, Amos, Micah, Hosea. Some would even argue that the Pentateuch and the Deuteronomistic history are older. So, if you find the right, there's a good number of scholars who would argue that half the Bible is older than Job.
I had a thought, but then I totally lost it. God damn it. Whoops.
Suddenly it's gone.
Did you have a fleeting moment of mental discombobulation or something? Because I get that a lot. I was mentioning something recently that I got to tell you, I don't remember shit as well as I did 30 years ago. When I was in nuke school, you had to cram a lot of crap into your brain. It was like just flooding information, and you had to just rote memorization stuff and be able to regurgitate it on command. Ain't gonna be any way to do that. I found out like after the age 40, your brain shrinks like 5%, every like 10 years or something. So
wow, I did not know that.
Something like that. Somebody can go verify, but I think it's like 10 after 40. It's 5% for every 10 years, if I remember, or close to it.
That's pretty scary, honestly.
It means we're gonna have to be dealing over the years with a Steve whose brain is shrinking bit by bit.
Yeah, that is it.
It's gonna be terrifying.
Imagine me 30 years from now.
30 years from now, you're going to be sitting there with a shotgun labeled agnosticism on a porch.
Oh, that's a good name for a channel. Shotgun agnosticism. I like that. Yeah.
Well, I just got an image of Steve in a mental hospital staring at a white wall going, I'm not an atheist. I'm not an atheist. I'm not an atheist.
According to that guy last night, the whole reason why people are targeted individuals is because they want to keep people or put people into mental institutions. I didn't see how that followed, by the way. I didn't see how that even was like something that would be fiscally the case, where how much money do you think they spend following people around, and the information gathering alone must be astronomically expensive to do that, and yet they want to do that just to one person, so they get them on Prozac and stick them in a mental hospital. It doesn't make much sense.
I mean, at that point, you might as well just silence the person. Like I'm not advocating for the murder of anybody, by no means. But at that point, it would be much cheaper to just hire a hitman.
Well, they don't want to kill them. They're trying to like gaslight them. They want to think that they're going crazy, right?
Yeah, but again, what is the purpose of that? I mean, obviously, there are some situations in your conspiracy theory realm where you think that if they kill you, you'll be made to be a martyr, right? But if you know something, but you're also a relative nobody, which typically tends to be the case, as like 99% of the world is, hitman's cheaper. It really is.
Well, like I said the other day, I was really kind of depressed at the NSA, CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, whatever. They don't really give a crap about me, even enough to even bug my computer or phone, or intercept my messages. It's like they don't care about me. It's like, what the hell? I feel so like nominal in society.
Then in that case, I feel stupidly special, because a long time ago, this was like back when I was still in high school, I decided to stroll through, take a nice little walk through the deep web without using like Tor. So
why would you go through the deep web without the onion router?
Now I gotta tell you, I have never ever been on the deep web at all. But
I didn't know about any of that. I was just like, I'm really curious.
Like the edgiest of teenagers, like I can handle all of this.
Well,
actually, I think you mean the dark web, not the deep web. Deep web is accessible. The dark web is what you need Tor. So I know you need Tor and a VPN, but I've heard horror stories about the dark web.
When you're going into the deep web, because originally, I believe the Silk Road was on the deep web, not backlogged onto the dark web.
You don't really need the Tor for deep web. Deep web is
but it is a good security protocol.
Sure. Yeah. So is a
VPN. And that's what he's talking about, is going on there without an onion router, or going on there without some type of personal security.
Yeah, I would have. There's just nothing on there.
I did. This was I think Silk Road was still up, but I was checking out stuff like Cannibal Cafe. I was just like really curious, and that kind of I saw a lot of crazy fucking shit. And
did you come across any red rooms?
Yes I did.
Hell no. Hell no. I get the Silk Road thing. I understand that. And by the way, everything's legal now. Just about everything. It's not really something that nobody really cares to even go back to. I don't think it's even around any longer. But no, I'm just not into that creepy fucking shit. It's just not one of the things I've ever had an interest in. In fact, I don't even like horror movies any longer.
I'll be honest. I was in the cat because there's never been like super documented proof that red rooms exist in the way that they're like classically described on the dark web. But I also know that anytime somebody says that stuff just doesn't happen, there's actually a legal case where there was a video, and I don't want to go into details of the video, obviously, but it was called Daisy's Destruction, I believe. And it is a demonstration in how low human beings can sink to make each other suffer.
Yeah, that's really awful.
And it's always telling when somebody else knows what I'm talking about when it comes to that video.
that dude made like a few videos actually, and well, he probably made more than we know about. But I don't know. I just really like the dark, macabre side of things, and ever since those days, I have not been actually like disgusted by anything. It just can't happen. So I think it actually helped me to go on to.
I think non sequitur is enough desensitizing for me.
I get that.
I watched the entirety of GE and Southern Israelite. Like
the farthest I go is a guy peeing on people's legs.
There's a
I'm
reason
done.
our slogan is never follow, because you will regret it.
I watched I think it was a paleontologist versus like two people from Christians Against Dinosaurs.
Oh, that was but that was a pro group. I mean, the original
Yeah,
Christians
yeah.
for Against Dinosaurs started off being a pro group, and some people took it actually literally.
The
So
Flat Earth Society started as a pro
Sure.
group as well, and then it was appropriated by actual flat earthers.
Oh, I actually have news on that, by the way. I don't
Oh.
know if you guys remember a guy named Sean G. He was on the Geek Room. He was a flat earther. I've engaged with him a few times. He went out of his way to make a video and tell me about it, that he has now renounced flat Earth. He realized it is untenable. I don't know if he's quite sure what the shape is, but he knows it's not flat. So that's progress.
Everyone knows.
Is he the person who, after renouncing flat Earth, he's just what is the terminology of
Earth agnostic.
skeptical on the shape of the Earth while also being a geocentrist still?
Yeah. Now there was a guy named Jamal Williams a long time ago, and Jamal Williams was a flat earther, geocentrist, and all that, jazz. And then he was in a hangout with me and Rez Rhetoric on I believe it was this channel, but can't find the video. I looked for it, but I thought it was on this channel. But we actually had convinced him that the Earth wasn't flat when it came to the pole stars, and so he realized, okay, this is untenable. But he still hung on to his young Earth creationist stuff, and I'm like, baby steps, I guess. And he still hung into geocentrism, but no longer flat earther. So, baby steps.
That's
Gotta
at
take
least
one step at a time.
Well, and you've done the other step. You've taken a young Earth creationist and turned them into a believer who understands that evolution is real.
One actually. Hunter Bailey
Wayne
used to be a creationist too.
Wayne Fillmore comes to mind.
But Hunter Bailey was one too, and you guys may not know the story with Hunter. I don't think. Do you know that he was a younger creationist, and he invited me to go on a channel with a guy named I think it was Soldier for God or something along those lines, and I said sure, and I went on there and I answered every one of this guy's questions and just nailed him to the ground. And Hunter was listening in. He's like, "Holy shit, maybe I don't really know younger creationism like I thought." And he was talking to me afterwards, and he's like, "You know what? Maybe this is this doesn't make sense." And now he's like in seminary school and wants to get a PhD in theology, but he knows younger creationism is crap. So
it's aggravating to me dealing with younger creationists now, because I recognize that young Earth creationism is one of the reasons why I don't have any of my friends from elementary school, because I grew up in a young Earth creationist school. So all of those friends are still that stupid.
I gotta. No, you can go ahead, David.
I was gonna say I was kind of the opposite. Like when I first heard there were people that thought the Earth was 6,000 years old, I was like, what? We've known for how long that it's older than that? Like, we knew before Christianity existed it was older than that, because there's stuff that's 12,000 years old that was around when Christianity was conceived of. So
yeah, your modern
You're talking about that's total nonsense. Everyone knows that the Earth is was made in 6 literal days, 6,000 years ago, not 10,000 years ago, not 8,000 years ago. 6,000.
Chris, you made me want to apply for lobotomy.
Genesis books.
How much damage do you think people like Ken Hovind and Ken Ham have done to the youth of society from decades, literally decades, of just feeding them the most outrageous horse shit imaginable?
I think a lot, but since the dawn of YouTube, much less, because there have been.
Do you think it's been less or more?
I think it's honestly less.
I would say a little bit less, because Kent Hovind was more of a creationist household name before the advent of YouTube. Now, even though he's got 90, 100,000 subscribers now on YouTube,
subscribers.
He's got what?
The vast majority of them, I'm sure, hate subscribers.
Fair, but just going off of raw numbers, I would argue that only people in the debunking and the specifically young Earth niches now know as much, or know about Kent Hovind to the extent that people used to way back in the day. Because nowadays, The most lay exposure that I see from Kent is maybe getting a Facebook video shared where somebody's like, "Look at this person standing for the truth," and it's a re-recording of one of his old sermons slash jack off tirades.
Yeah,
Well,
and
the
it's
event
like,
now-
back in the 90s.
To be fair, though, I don't think it had to do with YouTube as much as it had to do with Kent
Google?
kind of trashed his career with the several years in prison.
People,
I
The
was
only
just
thing
gonna
several
say-
years in prison did to Kent was trash his anus.
yeah, I don't think people really care about the fact that he was convicted on fraud. They be young with
But
creation.
no, well, the problem was that he lost his platform because Eric took it over.
That's a
Eric
bit.
took
that
it
was-
over and ran it into the ground. They've lost their studio.
By the way, I did. FYI, I just literally asked Sci 10 today. I was like, Sci 10, you got to get Eric on. We got to get Eric on non sequitur. Come on. So Eric, I don't know if you guys saw that Sci 10 Bernicate actually put a tweet out thanking non sequitur show on me. I had actually gone on a channel called the Canadian Atheist podcast, and Sci 10 game came up, and I happened to say some pretty nice things about Sci because I happen to get along with him. And I guess somebody pointed it out to him, and he tweeted out, "Thank you." And I was like, "Okay, well, hey, Sci, since we're buddies now, you got to get Eric on, man. I want Eric, even though I've talked to him twice already. It wasn't for very long, and I really want a longer dialogue with Eric because Eric is even more clueless than Kent on a lot of things.
Well, especially since Eric's approach is to ignore all of the information and argue just from the Bible, and he thinks it makes his position super strong, and he's ridiculously confident as a result.
Or worse, he just makes things assertions. I mean, when last time I talked to Eric, he made the assertion epigenetics disproves evolution. I was like,
It's
and I wanted to ask him, I really do, what is epigenetics? Because I know he has no freaking idea what epigenetics means.
the one nice thing about Eric though is that he's at least a lot more respectful and nice than his dad.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
You know,
He's-
I honestly think
His
I
dad
honestly
says
think-
wonderful things like, "What are you going to do about your job? Because when you're done talking to me, you're not going to be an atheist anymore."
Yeah, well, his whole shtick now is just going down to the basic thing of saying, "Look, if you don't believe me, then when you die, you're going to hell." Well,
yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't believe
he's
him on that.
retreated into the carrot and stick. That's it.
Yeah, it literally is a carrot and stick approach, and it doesn't work because I have the way I'm looking at this, Cyrus. If God is using Hovind to promote the truth, then that is one fucked up deity.
I made an argument because me and Godless Iowan just did a video together on a news article. I made the argument in there that if the God of the Bible turns out to be true, then my stance just changes to mesotheism.
If that's the case, then I would probably be a mesotheist as well. Because I can't imagine a just deity using somebody as duplicitous as Kent Hovind to disseminate godly information.
Well,
It's
yeah,
just- it's a
especially
non-
when
it's a
you
non
especially when you
sequitur.
consider the inconsistency of having an all merciful, all just deity when those are two pieces of a dichotomy on opposite sides of a coin. You can't have 100% both.
Yeah, you can't
what
be
happened
all
to-
merciful and all just at the same time. It's
Right,
impossible.
because one is a suspension of judgment. So if you are merciful, you suspend judgment, and if you have judgment, you suspend mercy. So you can't have 100% of each. But what happened to the young Earth creationists that were like bitching in the live chat? I was going to offer
When
them to
you
come in.
offered them a platform to speak, they decided to retreat.
Yeah, I don't get that.
They ran the fuck away, Steve. Like
You
they
know-
always do.
Zero says, "So if Yahweh turns out to be real, y'all are with me on my plan to kill the fucker come Judgment Day." Yes, if Yahweh turns out to be real, I advocate deicide.
Could you do that with like an angel blade or something?
No, I'm imagining you could just do it with sheer numbers. The guy's afraid of iron.
That's
Iron
true.
chariots.
Yeah, he absolutely hates iron.
Yeah, that's one thing about the Bible. I even was like, why were the iron chariots somehow this bane to a deity?
Steve, I don't know, but it seems like a good way to ward off Yahweh.
Well, I mean, even I'm not even not in an ontological way, but I mean, whoever wrote that, what made them come up with that?
Yeah,
They
that,
hadn't
that,
realized
that's what I
that
said. I don't know.
They were trying to create vampires before vampires were popular in literature. So Yahweh just became a vampire, but instead of garlic or a cross, the cross became the thing that got him hard, and the garlic just got turned into iron.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
probably as good as any other explanation. I have no idea.
But it's the same type of people that write about talking donkeys and snakes and.
Well, but those aren't really. I mean, okay, look at we talk. We're animals, so I don't think it's far fetched to somebody to be creative and go, okay, this animal talked. Okay,
Well,
whatever.
but
Where did the iron come from? That just was pulled out of nowhere.
We're the species that anthropomorphizes things. So if we see iron as a threat to us, because iron chariots, obviously in an actual war, would be a threat, then we're going to project that fear onto the deity that we're just making up as we go along, basically.
I suppose that's
That's the way
And
I see it.
I feel like there would be a pretty clear answer to this if we knew which nation in the ancient Near East would have been using iron chariots first. But I have no idea.
Well, there you go. That's something for you guys to research. And by the way,
tried looking it up. I couldn't find it, but I can always try more.
Dude Spewed said, I discovered Wolf and Bitten last night. I am so sorry, my friend. I please accept my apologies that you had to be exposed to Wolf Bitten.
That guy.
There's just no words for that dude. He's a special layer of dumb that even I haven't even possibly imagined how bad somebody could be. I mean, he actually kind of makes Nephi look kind of smart in a way.
So, random, but first, note that I'm the first person in my entire school to check out the Mishnah. And then also right here it says Gaylord.
Well, first of all, how do you know that's just not a new card?
Because I asked some of the attendants there and they said they've never even put a new card in this before.
Oh.
Yeah, some of the books I was looking through yesterday, the last time they were checked out was in like the late 80s.
So I'm just going to point out, and I'm going to move this for a second, but I don't know why you're checking out all those books when obviously the only book that you need read is right here.
I've read it a few times actually.
Don't forget the other expansion packs, Saurus.
Well, we didn't get the expansion packs. We didn't get the expansion packs because they handed this to us for free like 4 days ago. I imagine that you have to pay a subscription fee to get the expansion packs.
Yeah, I've read it. Like I said, I've read it twice, maybe 2.5 times. I was reading the Book of Mormon. I was like, I don't get any of this. It never was something. Even when I was Mormon, I was like, this really doesn't really hold any real spiritual value to me. It's very, very monotonous, to say the least.
It is. It's a lot of the same stuff that happened in the Old Testament. A lot of
that's because when it was being written, the only thing that happened was he just said, "Okay, I'm going to make a book about a new set of events that happened, but I'm going to go off of the old set of events, and then my best friend's wife is going to steal the literature and say, well, you should be able to make it again." And then he had to make it again out of his ass, and well, here we are.
Well,
sorry, the entire lore behind how that book was created is freaking hilarious.
I like him looking into through some special objects and getting his weird translation.
He had a bunch of rocks he threw in a hat, and then he looked through the hat.
But the concept behind the Year of Thumb is actually from the Old Testament. It was in the breastplate. Those rocks in the breastplate. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not how it worked in the Old Testament. That's not at all how it worked.
That's not how any of this works.
Well, that's why I've said that the Torah is the Star Wars Episode 4 of the Judeo-Christian trilogy, and then you've got the Bible, which is The Empire Strikes Back, probably why it's the most popular, and then of course you've got the Ewoks threw rocks at stormtroopers story, which is the Book of Mormon.
Wait, then what? Oh, does that make the Quran
the Star Wars Christmas
menace?
Yes.
The Quran is the Jar Jar Binks of the Abrahamic religions.
and you know what it also means? It means that every holy book that came before those amounts to the prequels, and Ocean will kill me for that.
Yeah, Ocean's lurking around somewhere. I see him on Twitter, but so he might be.
Yeah,
listening.
he's been commenting on some of my stuff because I put out an open invitation to challenge someone to a debate. Reformed Christian Apologist said he'd take me up on it in January.
Well, okay. First, we're trying to get Ocean to have a debate with DM Spencer, but they don't know what they're going to discuss.
Wait, hold on. Who?
Dave S. DM Spencer. Dave S. is.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I thought we were talking about somebody else.
No. He's working on his PhD in theology. Really nice guy. Matter of fact, he's one of the people that helped me got started in philosophy years ago. I was just so impressed by him that I was like, I really want to kind of learn more about this stuff. When he was, I think he just finished his bachelor's at the time, and now he's finished his master's. But yeah, I like to see that. But RCA, when it comes to Reformed Christian Apologist, I really do like RCA. But I got to tell you, nothing what he says makes sense to me. It's just fluff.
Well,
I mean, maybe that's my own epistemic limits. Maybe that's my own not understanding the topic. But I just never listen to him and go, "That's really
I'm
a
not
good point."
expecting much more than fluff for the debate, because that's what's going to be.
To me, Calvinism, just the whole concept, flies in the face of how religion's supposed to work. You're supposed to have free will so that you can be judged on your merits.
Well,
Yes, but it's all free.
It's not actually true.
It's all predestined. So that's where my head gets all.
I have
screwed
a
up with
hard
it.
time with Calvinism, hyper-Calvinism, predestination, and even I have a hard time with libertarian free will, and I even have a hard time with compatibilism in some ways, because I don't get. To me, none of it makes sense. Compatibilism and indeterminacy.
Compatibilism is, to me, the closest thing to what I imagine is the reality.
Right, but
It's
the problem I have with
closest thing.
compatibilism is that, okay, compatibilism is a deterministic viewpoint, and it's supposedly that you have free will of some sort, which, by the way, I don't think we have free will. I think rationality rules is right. I just call it will. But it's a deterministic thing. So think of this, and tell me what you guys think of this. If there's compatibilism such that you have some relationship between free will and determinacy, if you're giving a specific conditions, and you're having a choice between A and B, and given those specific conditions, you choose A. Years in the future, if you were to time travel back to the exact same point where you had to make that decision, given the exact same conditions, determinacy would say you would make the exact same choice. Indeterminacy, or libertarian free will, would say that you have either choice you can make, right? So you can't say which the agent is going to do. So I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, because it's basically saying, given the exact set of conditions, you are determined to make the same choice every time. And even though that makes sense, it is so hard to wrap my head around that type of determinacy.
It's unfalsifiable too. Like, you can't know it at this point in time until we can find a way to actually time travel and look. We won't know.
Not exactly. I mean, there might be some kind of randomness in the universe. Like some actual randomness, but I'm not.
But I just said, all things, like Ceteris Paribus, all things being equal, if you have the same exact condition, you're going to make the exact same choice according to compatibilism.
And just
I'm a determinist, so it's
break it down to the quantum state of the universe. Like, if the universe is in that state, you're going to do the same thing.
That's what compatibilism says. Yes, because
that's it.
And a lot of it's very difficult for me to wrap my head around. Although it is the closest thing I can say. I don't accept libertarian free will at all. I don't accept indeterminacy. So, but I do think that there is a lot of quantum factors. But again, if you could say that the quantum factors are exactly the same, you would make the same decision every single time. So are we really making our own decisions then? I mean,
no.
Or are we just kind of the illusion of free will?
Like it is, epistemic versus physical. So
it might be a bit of an anecdotal approach, but honestly, how many times has somebody told themselves, because we know that the emotional response almost always happens before the logical response. It's just how the brain is wired. Subconscious operates before your conscious does.
Yeah, by a few hundred microseconds, whatever it is.
Yeah, enough to matter in decision making, but not enough to where you can tell it's happening. How many times has somebody said, why did I do that? Or why did I say those things? Or why did I make that decision after the fact? It almost all, and I know it's entirely anecdotal for that to be the argument for it, but it still leads me to closer to a compatibilistic approach almost every time.
Yeah, it's the closest, I think. Yeah.
Because at that point, it's like, if you can't even parse out why you had a severe emotional response to something, because there's some times where I'll just get angry and can't even like understand why I did. That's because your agency isn't exactly as strong as you think it is.
Sure, and you know, I had this conversation with S.J. Thomason, who is a libertarian free will person, and she you know kind of falls back on modalism, and then when you ask her about modalism, it's just she has this really weird, bizarre version of modalism, and you know, when it comes to like William Lane Craig's argument from middle knowledge, right?
Oh God.
And I barely have a concept of what they mean by middle knowledge. The way, and this isn't exactly, I don't think what it is, but the way I explained it, and anybody out there can tell me it's close, but no, not really exactly. The way I read the middle knowledge is that God has knowledge of what you're going to do given certain conditions, and then he makes this possible world an actuality. So you will be put in that modal reality where that will be the conditions, and you have that decision that he knows you're going to make.
Yeah, the way I think it's been explained is like if you're watching a like a football game, but you have it recorded. So you're like in the game when they were playing it, they had the free will, but now that you're watching it, it's all determined. And
no, so I don't think of it that way. I the way I'm looking at it is when you have these multiple possible worlds out there, you have all these different possible worlds, and God knows in one possible world, given these conditions, this is what you're going to do. So he tries to manifest that world actuality wise. So you get in that situation where he knows you're going to choose like A over B.
Right.
That's the way
I'm
understand
in
middle
agreement with
knowledge.
you. I'm just telling you that that's an argument that's been used, but like the argument that I had, you know, to respond to that was, well, he's not. It's not just like a certain game. It's like he's picking a specific game off the shelf and playing that one.
I think though any apologetics that are used to describe the deity when you're trying to go for an approach like that though does nothing but strip that deity of power.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I mean, obviously, if he can manifest a possible world into actuality, that's a lot of power. But it does seem to like limit his omnipotence, doesn't it?
Well, at that point, you have to realize though, at that point, after you've gotten to the point of logical omnipotence, because I'm willing to accept, I even have a video on my channel about the argument from the stone, why I think it's a bad argument, because I'm willing to accept logical omnipotence. They're only able to do things that are logically possible. Like you can't square a circle as an example. I'm willing to accept that. But I feel that after you get to that point, once you start doing things to limit omnipotence, the minute that phrase even comes out of the mouth, you no longer have omnipotence in any way, shape, and form. You just have possibly the best explanation at that point would be maximally powerful, but omnipotent, no.
Well, yeah, because the whole issue would be like if God is bound by the laws of logic, then he can't be the author of them.
Yeah, I got no problem with the notion of God can only do what is logically possible. I get that, right? But like you said, when you start limiting his omnipotence and saying, okay, well, God's going to limit his knowledge and relate that to, okay, well, Jesus didn't know everything that the Father did, so he limited his knowledge, which is not the same thing as the middle knowledge thing, but it does diminish the overall omni characteristics of a deity that I see are posited.
I mean, I can agree with that, but we're also talking about specific forms of knowledge, like of logic. If we were in like paraconsistent logic, the law of non-contradiction isn't really a problem.
Yeah, that gets thrown out in that version.
Yeah, like Hegel was completely critical of the law of non-contradiction. So you can have all the omnipotence you want in paraconsistent logic.
Yeah, well, actually, Aristotle was against the law of excluded middle, but there are other types of logic that exclude both law of excluded middle and non.
But Steve, Matt Slick, and I trust Matt Slick. He told me that the laws of logic are prescribed by God, and
yeah, I think that's
the law of excluded middle is a thing.
I don't get that. It's like they think that classical logic must be written into the fabric of the universe or something. And once you start talking to them about other types of logics, then they're like, oh well, that's just
Yeah, I don't think they understand.
God's logic.
I mean, good luck trying to explain quantum mechanics to them, because that is borderline paraconsistent logic. Well,
yeah, especially what is it, the the split experiment. I can't the slit experiment
Double
for
slit
quantum
experiment.
for
Well,
quantum
any kind of
physics.
superpositioning. I mean, anytime
on
you say
that.
that a proposition is, or like a switch is both on and off at the same time, you can't really just relate that in a classical logical sense, right? I mean, you
No.
have to use some more kind
No.
of multi-valued logics.
What a lot of those people don't seem to understand the difference between something that is prescriptive and something that's descriptive. That's where you run into like the biggest disconnect. They can't wrap their when you say something like the laws of the universe, like the laws of physics. All of us have probably heard at one point or another when somebody says laws of physics, they say, "Oh, well, a law implies a lawgiver." And it's like, no,
'cause they're
the
descriptive.
law is descriptive of what we see. We're not
Right.
saying it was prescribed by a deity.
And those laws are not some kind of, in my opinion, they're not some kind of ontological necessity.
They're just
are
what
what we
they're just
describe
what
them to be.
observed that happen to be the case.
I mean, you
I,
can
honest, I honestly just avoid the term law altogether when
No, I don't mind
talking
calling
about
it
this
law.
because all it does is gives them that edge.
Well,
I
I don't like calling the laws of logic because they're principle of logic. But the physical laws, I don't mind calling them laws. But the problem is that you start getting into like Hume's and problem of induction and uniformity of nature and all this and hypothetical deductive methodology and confirmation and all this other crap that gets really confusing. Matter of fact, this actually leads into something that I want to have a topic on if you guys are interested, not now, but later on. Somebody had asked me to explain the Raven paradox, which happens to be one of my favorite paradoxes. And I'm going to try to get with Landon and Dr. Kroon, and we're going to be picking out our favorite paradox and explaining it to people. So
I
if you
totally
guys have,
go.
yeah. So if you guys have a paradox that you really like, then we might do that this Sunday or some other time, but soon. But find your favorite paradox, get it down where you can explain it really well, and then we'll go from there. Because I really happen to like. I don't understand the resolution of the paradox that well using Bayesian or anything like that. Can't do, but I understand the paradox. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. I don't know if you saw it or not, but when you were posting about the Raven paradox, Ruben left a response using the Milwaukee Atheist account. I don't know if you saw it or not.
I didn't. I know Ruben, of course, but what was it on Facebook or on Twitter?
On Twitter.
Was this the other day?
It was like 2 days ago when you posted like the Raven paradox in 2 tweets or something.
I'll have to check. But yeah, what I did, by the way, that wasn't bad being able to explain the Raven paradox in 2 tweets. I condensed that shit down.
Yeah, I guess I'm still not sure if I get it, but
really,
yeah, in the chat,
like
somebody
because I was trying to understand it, but I mean, like I never took like a logic course, so I have a hard time like following the notation. But from like I was asking Ruben to explain it to me. I think he kind of got it across, but so he responded saying that the first statement is made in terms of universal quantifier predicts, while the second isn't. And then he says, "Can you translate it?" But then he also says, once he got it, I think.
Yeah, because I used the universal quantifier because I'm saying all F's are G's, so all ravens are black.
Right.
So anything, if you take what's called a contrapositive, would be not Q, it implies not P, because you have an implication, right? So P implies Q, but the contrapositive is not Q.
Right. That was the thing that he had an issue with. He said that the denial of the antecedent does not necessitate the denial of the consequent. But
that's not what it is. The fact is that logically, if I have P implies Q, so all ravens that are black, right? So everything that's a raven, it must be black. Okay, so one implicates to the other. Then any non-black, non-raven is also confirmation that all black ravens are black, because it's logically the same as the contrapositive. Now it's a lot easier when I do this, because I'm actually going to be like writing it out. But it's a logical equivalency, because you're saying that because the implication of P implies Q must be equal to the contrapositive, then anything that is not black and not raven is confirmation that all ravens are black. It's hard to wrap your head around. It's not an easy paradox.
like I see what you're trying to get to. I just don't see how why not P, therefore not Q would follow.
Not Q, not therefore not P.
It's like it's like an extremely complex syllogism in a way. That's the way I liken it. That's the way I liken it too. It's like a really complex syllogism, like the way you know, like syllogisms like all humans are apes. Oh,
here I'll give you one.
Or here,
apes,
I happen. There's one I was going to use, but for example, okay. So if you have again, I'm not formally trained in logic, so take it for what it's worth. But I do have an expert who's listening right now, who's actually working on his PhD as we speak. But by the way, come in here if you want, Mr. Expert. Let me give you the link real quick. So
is that his name, Mr. Expert?
No, but
I'm going to call him Mr. Expert.
Yeah,
he doesn't like being called an expert, but he's working on a PhD right now. He lives in Guam, so the time things are. But anyways, so the way you I look at logic, or the way I think it's supposed to be. Okay, so you have a conditional. So if I say P implies Q, and I'm going to use this. If a figure is a square, then it's a quadrilateral, right? Because all squares are quadrilaterals, correct? So if it's a square, it has to be a quadrilateral. One implies the other, right?
Sure.
Okay, so that's a conditional. If it's a square, then it's a quadrilateral. P implies Q. Then you have what's called the converse. Okay, the converse is basically taking P and Q and reversing them. So if a figure is a quadrilateral, then it's also a square. Okay, but that's a false statement, right? So the converse is false.
Right.
Okay, because the conditional is true, but the converse is false because if a figure is a quadrilateral, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a square. Then you have the inverse, and the inverse is not P implies not Q. So if a figure is not a square, then it's not a quadrilateral, which also is false. And then you have the contrapositive, which is not Q implies not P, which if a figure is not a quadrilateral, then it's not a square, which is true. So the conditional is true, implies that the contrapositive must also be true, because if it's not a quadrilateral, then it cannot be a square. So not Q implies not P is just a logical consequence of P implies Q.
Okay, I'm with you right there.
Okay, so all black ravens, right? If you're a raven and you're black, if P implies Q. If I'm a raven, therefore I'm black, then the contrapositive would be that anything that's not black cannot be a raven. So it's also a confirmation of your hypothesis that all ravens are black.
Hold on. I'm trying to. Okay, so
it's not really. Yes, Brian points out it's not really a paradox. It's a logical inconsistency, and there are ways of resolving this. And I've looked at some of the solutions. They're complicated and beyond my level to really explain in any detail. The only one I can explain that one of the explanations is that there's only a certain amount of finite ravens, and you can actually count them, so you can have a confirmation theoretically that all ravens are black, right? So that is true. But you also have an uncountable number of objects that are not ravens that are not black. Those are not countable. So you can never determine that by the fact that not raven, not black is confirmation that all ravens are black, because you can never look at all the other objects. There's an infinite number of objects out there that would be confirmation that all ravens are black. So there's a disproportionate amount of way you're looking at it confirms the hypothesis. So if your hypothesis is that all ravens are black, the only way you can ever truly confirm that is by looking at all ravens, which is theoretically possible. But you can't do that by confirming. You can't actually count all the things that are infinite, right? Because they're uncountable.
Okay. I think I gotcha.
All practical purposes. I mean, somebody could make the argument you can theoretically count every object in the universe, but I would probably, I don't know. To me, it's still you would have a hard time counting every conceivable object in the universe.
Yes, that would be difficult.
Because I mean, you probably posit that's an actual affinity. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, that's one of my favorite paradoxes. So I'm going to be trying to explain that in more detail when we do this. But you get the kind of gist of it. But if you guys have a paradox you like, let me know.
Well, my favorite paradox, and it's like really standard, but it's the Pinocchio paradox.
Which one?
The Pinocchio paradox.
Refresh my memory.
So Pinocchio, Pinocchio says, "I am lying to you."
Oh, you mean the
Oh
liar's
yeah,
paradox.
that one.
Yeah, the liar's paradox.
Yeah, if he and so if he is lying, then he's telling the truth. Therefore, his nose shouldn't grow. But if he's telling the truth, then he was lying.
Yeah,
so
that's
his
just a
nose should
modern day
grow.
version.
So
Yeah. People are inundating with me messages. Okay, so yeah. Hi, viewer discussion. Yeah, I read some of your stuff on the Atheism video. I haven't had time to respond to it. I have a kind of a thing. People that write more than like 3 paragraphs, I have a hard time making it through all the things to try to respond to them because it's just a lot of stuff. I like really brief. Here's a comment, respond to it kind of stuff. Anything more than like a paragraph, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time responding, but I will read it more in detail, viewer. But I did see you left some messages on it.
I don't really have a favorite paradox, but I do have a favorite fallacy.
Oh, what's your fallacy?
I am really enjoying the fallacy of 4 terms.
Oh, I committed that the other day.
I
really did. Somebody pointed out to me. I did a syllogism, and they're like, "Hey, Steve, isn't that the fallacy of 4 terms?" I'm like, "Damn." Yeah.
I am a fan of that because, like, one of the examples, I think it's just the one on Wikipedia, but it's like how vague the word nothing is, so you can use it in 2 different contexts. So it would be, what was the fucking argument? Okay. There is nothing better than, nothing is better than happiness. A ham sandwich is better than nothing. Therefore,
Ham
a ham
sandwich.
sandwich is better than
Well,
happiness.
that's okay. So you have ham sandwich, nothing, happiness. Those are 3 terms. What's the 4th term?
It's the second nothing.
But that's equivocation. That's not fallacy of 4 terms. That's an equivocation fallacy. Fallacy of 4 terms would be like all cats are felines, all dogs are canines, therefore all cats are canines. Because you have canines, cats, dogs, and felines. Those are 4 different terms in the syllogism. That's the fallacy of 4 terms.
Wait, hold on, just a second.
Because think about it. All cats are felines, all dogs are canines. Therefore, all cats are canines. You have 4 different terms.
No, I am understanding
cats,
that.
Dogs, felines, canines. So that's the fallacy of 4 terms. And I committed that the other day. That's why I know about it. I mean, I knew about the fallacy, but I mean, I was like, somebody pointed out to me, I was like, shit.
Hold on. How is this explained? Hold on.
Somebody says, what about Zeno's paradox? Zeno's paradox is long since solved by calculus, man. In fact, that got brought up in the non sequitur show the other day by Southern Israelites. It's like, dude, you take a summation, right? 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8 plus 1/16 plus ... You do an infinite summation on it. What do you get? 1. Problem solved.
Okay, so all right, so I'm just going off.
Equivocation is not a 4th term issue. That's just an equation of the term nothing. No, 4 terms, it has to be 4 separate terms. Equivocation is not going to be a 4-term fallacy. Because nothing is not nothing and nothing. They're used 2 different ways, but it's not 2 different terms. At least the way I wouldn't think so.
I mean, I'm just going off of what I saw on Wikipedia, so I understand it's not.
Well, that was your first mistake.
I'm
kidding.
It just says in everyday reasoning, the fallacy of 4 terms occurs most frequently by equivocation.
And that might be, well, no, well, I don't know. I've never used the 4. I've never seen the 4-term fallacy used that way, but I'm not going to say it's not. So,
because I guess I think the fallacy of 4 terms
might just be 4 different
formal.
Yeah, I think Zero might be right. It says he uses 4 different meanings, so they're different terms in that sense, and that might be true. I can see that. So I'm going to rescind that because it's an equivocation fallacy and nothing is used 2 different ways. It's considered to be 2 different separate terms. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Well, I enjoy it for that then, just for the fact that I can argue that a ham sandwich is better than happiness or whatever. I can argue for crazy things like that. I think that's amusing.
Dave, what's your favorite fallacy?
The fallacy is my favorite fallacy.
You know what's funny? Somebody on Twitter the other day said fallacy, and they made some shit up, and I'm like, you realize that's a real fallacy? It's like, no, it's not. I'm like, no, dude, it really is.
It really is.
The fallacy is when you say that the conclusion isn't true based upon the fact that the argument is a bad argument or the conclusion doesn't follow from the premises.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that the conclusion isn't true. It just means it's a bad argument.
Right.
It means the argument doesn't prove it's true. That's all it means.
Yeah. You can't arrive to a you can't arrive. What is it? What's the phrasing? To a valid conclusion from a fallacious argument.
Yeah, basically, if the logical structures like a rule of inference, like modus ponens, like that, that's a valid argument. That's a logically valid argument. If the premises are true, then it's sound. Floyd says, "What about the fallacy? That's a legit thing too, actually." So, I think that's when somebody claims that. Okay, I'm trying to remember this one, and there's also a fallacy.
Oh my god. Okay. To hop off of the fallacies.
You're just being fallacious.
I like the fact that you can construct a whole sentence out of just using the word police. So like police.
Sure, let's go with that.
that is a sentence, a real sentence.
No, I'm sure it's grammatically correct. Linguistics is not my thing. I have a hard time speaking as it is, but I look every so often into some linguistic stuff, and I'm like, how the hell do people know about linguistics? It's the most confusing subject known to man. I was doing some research on what's called de-re and de-dicto a while back, and a lot of it got into different things relating to noun, verb, NP, which is noun predicates, and I was like, this is confusing. The language is a lot more complicated than I ever had imagined. Even the whole de-dicto de-re thing is very confusing. I understand it, I think, now, but if you guys ever try to look into the difference between de-re and de-dicto, man, it is not an easy thing to wrap your head around. Have you ever tried?
I have not even attempted.
Chris, have you? No. The de-re and de-dicto are two different ways of looking at a statement. It has to do with opacity and transparency, and what that means is, can you substitute a co-referential term with something else without changing the truth value of the proposition? It's called intentionality. And when you look at a de-dicto approach versus a de-re approach, then, for example, if I said, what was the example I used? I said, because I explained this to a friend of mine, or a guy that I was talking to, I said, yeah, I use this example because this is what I found on a page. Max is looking for a toy. Okay. Now, if you look at it, de-re, he's looking for some specific toy. So that, let's say his toy is, happens to be like a Game Boy, right? So Max is looking for a toy with a specific one in mind, like a Game Boy. Now, if you replace toy with Game Boy, Max is looking for a Game Boy, that remains true, right? Because he's looking for a specific toy. It's de-re interpretation. It's called transparent. But the other way of looking at it, de-dicto, which is the opaque version, would be he's looking for a generic toy, right? He's looking for a toy, not a specific one. So if you replace toy with Game Boy, now that sentence, that proposition is now false, because he's not looking for a Game Boy. He's looking for a toy, a generic situation. He's not looking for anything specific. So,
well, wouldn't that still be true because a Game Boy falls under toy?
No, because he's not looking for a Game Boy. He's looking for a toy, anything that's he's looking for something specific. Max is not looking for a Game Boy specifically, right? He's looking for just a toy.
But what happens?
He could be looking for a Voltron toy, right? Which happens to be one of the toys I liked as a kid. So Max could be looking for a Voltron. He may not be looking for a Game Boy at all, but he's looking for a toy, but not that specific toy. He's looking for if you look at a de-re, then it could be he's looking for a Voltron, right?
Well, they actually translate about a thing and about the word. That's how that
Right,
translates.
property of a thing and property of the proposition, as my friend MJ puts it. Yes, exactly. It's really confusing looking at something de re dicto, because changing the one word in something else will change the propositional value. Because again, I may know Max is looking for a Voltron, right? And if I say Max is looking for a Game Boy because I substitute that for toy, that sentence could be false now. But if I read it de re, substituting Game Boy in for toy is not going to change the propositional value. So I'm gonna get. I know he said it's late and he has background music. So what? Get in here anyways. Yeah.
Your job is to bow to the whim of Steve.
I'm gonna actually have to go here, I think.
Yeah, I gotta get going too, because we're gonna be doing again with Neil 604 Atheist. We have in 30 minutes I'll be on his channel. But
yeah, and I got some papers to finish. Because
you put those off until like 5 minutes before they're due.
Oh my god, that's
that story of my life
week has been going.
High school. I was the most procrastinating mofo of all time.
I have never written a paper in advance.
Yeah, I usually
that was me in high school too. I was like, here, you got to write your history term paper. Go write a history term paper, right? Sure, you know about this whole thing all year, and I did it in the last month.
Yeah,
literally.
Yeah, I know. That's how I made it through school.
You know, we had a classical mythology paper to write. Like, we had to pick like some work of art, and we had to like explain it, like what it was depicting, why we knew what it was depicting. But then we also had to like talk about different variations of the story and like how they were treated in the narrative. And because I am not a super creative person, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to JSTOR, look up some papers, and just bullshit my way through this. And I did that. And I mean, I got 100, which is great.
Yeah, well, a lot of classes I bullshitted through. Like when I took English 1A, and it was mostly on MLA formatting. Now, I don't know if any of you guys got to do MLA.
We're doing MLA. Yeah.
It's tedious as fuck, right?
It looks awful too.
I think Chicago style or ADA probably makes a little more APA.
APA, yeah.
APA. But yeah, MLA is. I was like, I'm never in my life going to have to ever use this. Never. I'm not getting a PhD. I don't care about this shit. I just wanted to get it done and over with. I still got an A in the class. It was me and me and another person who happened to be a girl. Her and I were the only 2 A's in the class. Everybody else got B's, C's, D's, and F's. Nobody knew what the hell was going on because the instructor sucked. But all I did was rote memorization and regurgitated it, forgot about it, couldn't tell you shit about it if I had to.
I suggest everyone get one of these when they're in school. Tells you how to do all these different citation formats really simply.
Yeah, if you're going to be writing papers, sure. But again, if I ever needed that information, I can go look it up. I don't have to have it memorized. I just don't see the need for that. I think it's a waste of class.
Yeah, I write papers for fun, and citation is like one of my favorite things to do in a paper. So
for some,
I like writing blogs. I mean, I don't write papers, but I find that people don't deduce as much as they should. Matter of fact, when I ask people for citation, their ability to deduce is zero. They don't ever present to me a paper. Matter of fact, I can't remember the last time somebody gave me an actual peer review paper to read.
I ask for them all the time. I ask for them all the time, and I get accused of being a chicken and saying, well, I don't believe you. Well, I'm sorry. I don't take your anecdotes at face value, buddy, but that's just the way I am.
Yeah, I don't get it. Because, I mean, I may not fully understand a lot of papers, but I've read a shit ton of papers this last year. I have a collection of them that I'm kind of putting forth for epistemology that I might put on MeWe. But most people that sent me a paper before didn't read it. I knew that. But this year, I don't think anybody even sent me a paper on epistemology that I can recall. You know? But if people want to read my blog, by the way, I did write a new blog piece I put in the live chat. It's called "Can Atheism Be True?" Not in the way you think. So, and you know, a friend of mine who's really brilliant in logic. He's one of the smartest guys I know in logic, even though I know he's taking courses in it, but he's not a logician. But his name is Uriah Christensen, if you guys know him. He actually really had a good analysis of my my blog on that. And I'm going to read what he said because it's on my Facebook, so it's public. But this was really brilliant of him. He said, if we take deflationary theory of truth, then it is true that P statements are redundant, which I happen to kind of agree. Deflationary theory seems kind of self-evident to me. I don't know. It's weird. It's like the snow is white because the snow is white because it's a fact that snow is white. Okay. It seems like I like what's called a semantic theory of truth, or Tarski theory of truth. That seems to me they're kind of deflationary over correspondence. But he says one could also make the case that lacking a belief is incoherent. For example, I lack a leg implies that there's a leg I'm supposed to have, and the leg is missing. So does an atheist that says I lack a belief imply that they're supposed to have a belief, but the belief is missing? That sounds more like amnesia rather than a position on the existence of God. I agree, and I don't like the whole thing lack of belief. It does sound like something's missing.
Well, the only reason it's there is because we've lived in a culture that has like just believed throughout most of history.
Yeah, but my argument, if you read my blog, was again, I put in the live chat, I'll put it again. Go read it and message me what you think. My argument was basically, if atheism is defined as lack of belief, it can't be a propositional statement that's true and false. So you can't say atheism is true, and you can't say atheism is false if it's merely just a lack of belief. So.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people would have an issue with that.
Yeah. And yes, I know, you know, there's not a true white. Snow isn't true white. Polar bear fur isn't true white. But I mean, the way people generally look at something being true, if there's a corresponding fact of reality, the correspondence theory of truth would be something is true if there's a fact of reality that makes it the case that it's true, right? So that doesn't way it's working deflationary. But anyways, go check out my blog. I don't write papers, but I like writing stuff on blog, and I write them really at 3 a.m. in the morning, and most of them. So I'm pretty well half tired, and it's just, you know, I get up in the middle of the night, I can't sleep, and I'm thinking. So they might not be perfect, which is fine. I'm thrilled if somebody goes, yeah, I think you made an error in your blog, and I get to correct it. I'm fine with that. I might make grammatical errors and things of that nature. I don't like it when somebody says, hey, Steve, you fucked up. And I'm like, okay, what part? Oh, I didn't read your blog. What? And I've had that happen on numerous occasions. They're like, well, you're wrong. I'm like, okay, what part of it's wrong? Oh, I don't know. I didn't bother to read your blog. I'm like, oh, freaking A. I was like, really? MJ says, I like semantic theory of truth because of ontological parsimony. I like that too. Semantic theory of truths are confusing, though. Tarski's theory of truth is really confusing. I still can't figure out if it's deflationary or correspondence. I don't know. I think it's more deflationary. But what, Chris?
Oh, I said, they also will retort and just say they don't believe you exist as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's bizarre too. Did you ever read my blog post on that?
Of them not believing you exist?
Yeah, the problem with not believing. Yeah.
Oh, you mean the blog post that was generated by a computer because
I don't
have had an author.
The MJ says it's both, and I've heard that analysis of Tarski's and semantic theories, but I've also heard that they tend to more one than the other. By the way, I got an alarm going off. This might let me know that I've got a date here in a half hour. By the way, MJ is the expert that I'm talking about. He knows his shit. But give me a sec to turn off this alarm, then I'll come kind of pull this to a close. So go ahead and say your farewells and your channels and all that.
Biblical history skeptics. We just drink and read the Bible and bullshit.
Milwaukee atheists. We do a similar thing. It's not really all that different, honestly. But we also do like long form videos, not just like. I mean, I know Chris does that too. We're very similar channels, honestly.
They're the same person. Only they're just like like he has two cameras, and it's weird.
Yeah, and this alter ego of mine can also grow facial hair.
I don't exist. You exist twice. Hey, Jim from Atheist Edge, you're late. Better late than never. By the way, if you guys are not subscribed to Atheist Edge, what the hell's wrong with you? Go watch his stuff. He's like one of my favorite atheist YouTubers. Not that you guys aren't my favorite too, but I really like the Atheist Edge. I think they've got
ass, Steve.
Well, you guys are in here. He's not. So fuck you, Jim. He's watching. No, I like Jim's approach. He takes a very open-minded stance on things, and he steel mans people all the time too. So I like that. I don't like people arguing weak arguments or against weak arguments. Like it's like low-hanging fruit stuff anymore. I think we all start off that way. I know I sure did, but eventually I just find the low-hanging fruit boring as fuck. How many times can you tell people, like, oh, the age of the earth is not 6,000 years? It's like, or they put forth some dumb thing like, evolution believes that everything came from nothing. It's like, shut up, go away.
No, from a rock.
Yeah. You believe
there is no logical issue with everything coming from nothing.
No,
would that be the argument from the stone fallacy?
Actually, there is an argument. I don't know if you're referring to, but there is an argument from the stone. It just means that you assert something to be absurd without actually showing why it's absurd.
I was being facetious, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Lawrence, real quick before we go. Taylor, this is legit Egyptian papyrus.
Ooh.
Okay, hold on. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I managed to get my hands on a few tubes of it. So
just to wrap it up, in the next couple of days, like I said, I really do want to have that hangout on paradoxes. I'm going to explain the Raven paradox a little more detail, hopefully, because I just a real brief thing on it. I also want to have a discussion on how to stream. A couple of people have been asking me on that. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to basically start from step one of how to go into your YouTube channel, how to set up the encoder, how to operate OBS or XSplit, your choice. I know how to do both. I'm surprised that so many people don't know how to use XSplit or OBS and how to stream.
I think they're both pretty self-explanatory, honestly.
You know what? I'm not going to say that because I didn't know at first. It wasn't until a year or two, whatever it was ago, where I had to say, I've got to learn this, and I did, and it wasn't too difficult to learn. But at first, it was a little confusing.
It's such an OBS is such an open program, and they all are. To be honest with you, they have so many options it can be a little overwhelming at first.
Yeah, I think Vim,
I've never used any of those, so
I think XSplit is a little bit more over the top than OBS, but it does have a lot of options. Dr. Griffith, she wants more on streaming, so I would do that just for her alone, even if nobody wanted to watch. So, Dr. Griffith, if you want to learn how to stream, I could either just do it as a stream, or if you want to come in and ask questions one of these days, give me your time. I will wrap it around your schedule. So, if you tell me when you're available. And then we'll have it if you want to come in, and I will step by step show you how to stream. Be happy to do so.
Yeah, and it really depends on how and like on how sophisticated you want to be. Because like, although my show's our live streams are fairly lowbrow, we have 3 cameras. We have a big main one, and then 2 other ones, and we Chris switches between those with a rolling board, and we also have this audio board, and it's a lot of extra stuff.
Oh, sure, it can get complicated really quickly, and I mean I know OBS pretty well, but I've worked with it for a really long time, and Dave knows OBS exceptionally well. So audio
is the hardest part of streaming, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah,
it really is.
And by the way, Dr. Griffith says, "I will owe you a bottle of Jack's." I love you. That woman is just amazing. But yeah, audio, when I run OBS, I have to very carefully change the decibel levels so it equalizes. And I'm sure David has the same problem. And you have to vary like -4, -6. And there's a sweet spot where it seems like, everybody's equalized. And when it's not, people notice.
Well, I got you and Kyle dialed in really well, but every single guest that comes on, I got to set a noise gate. I got to set the compression level so they're not overdriving. I want you guys to sound at least like you're in the same room.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do is on my audio level, as soon as it hits the red line, as soon as you start redlining, I just drop it down a little bit. Right. And so I want it high on the high end, but not where it's clipping. and or at least a little bit lower than that. So once you start getting to the top point where you're overdriving it and you're clipping, then that's when you hear the breakage and the dropouts. And so audio is critical when you're streaming.
And there's this huge part of me when I do that wants to just open everything wide, but I know that'll sound like crap.
So yeah, you can tell it
just sit there and play with it.
Yeah, so I'll show people to do that. There's also another program you want to look into, people called Voice Meter. It's a great program for controlling audio
Voice
output.
Meter Banana.
Voice Meter and Banana, especially if you want to record.
Yep. It's what lets me bring in outside audio so clearly when even on a hangout like this, I can do it.
But that would be more next level stuff. So I think that we'll maybe do it in steps, right? Show people how to actually set up. The first step is setting up the stream. The second step would be then setting up the encoder and working with OBS. So we'll probably do it. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it all in one hangout. I'm sure we can, but anyways, I gotta go. Go check me out on Neil the 604 Atheist in about 20 minutes. I'm gonna have a discussion with him, and I want to thank you guys for watching as always. Man, I couldn't believe we had like 100 people watching. That's cool. Thank you guys. If you got suggestions for what you want to have, talked about on this channel, let me know. I know a lot of the ideas that I have go into the non sequitur show, so I don't do as much on this channel that I had been before, and I gotta correct that. I got to put a lot more on this channel. I'm working with Landon. I'm working with Dr. Kroon. We're going to be doing more DEF CON 1 sciences. We're going to be talking about math with them and a friend of mine who has a channel called Epic Math Time. And so we are going to be doing more stuff. But if you guys have something specific, I know a couple of people have asked me to do some pre-calc hangouts and to do algebra hangouts. I'm okay with that. And what else does people ask me? I don't know. But if you got things you want to know about, I will do the best I can to explain it. If I can't, I'll find somebody. So,
and remember, everybody, 0.9 repetent equals 1.
Damn right, bitches.